So my talk is on the multiple partial perspectives with things. So thinking with the non-human in quantum physics changes everything. Once we move outside the human-centric domain of concerns, then fresh possibilities for creative engagement emerge. The interest value of non-human perspectives has been well established, yet a looming question remains. How should we humans engage the perspective of things? Here I use the word things to encompass all entities and matter, biotic, technological, or abiotic. The information emerging from scientific epistemological processes regarding mattering and energetic behaviors at atomic and subatomic levels necessarily causes a shift in perception about the qualities of material reality. This knowledge in turn can be diffracted across aesthetic, process, and philosophical traditions in art. Even so, the hoary concerns of mind raise their virtual heads and prompt us to question how or if breaking out of the Cartesian cage of the subjective position is possible at all. Is knowing the structure and processes of atoms sufficient to assess that I could ever know what it is like to be an atom? Admittedly, this is not what I am trying to achieve. You could say that I'm not there yet. Instead, I have drawn on atomic knowledge from quantum physics to approach whole entity shared awareness between things. This work is informed by several different contemporary philosophers. Amongst them are Vinciane Desprez from Belgium, Americans Karen Barad and Donna Haraway, and UK-based Sarah J. Watmore. These European and American thinkers have concerned themselves with both the mattering of existence and the perspectives of non-human things. Of these, physicist Karen Barad is the one who has forged the conceptual path between quantum physics and everyday lived cultural processes within today's relevant context of new materialism. What I have done is to bring this thinking into material cultural production as art making or even material philosophy. I have experimented with enacting theories towards sharing non-human perspectives. To bring you with me, will first discuss three concepts: partial affinities or partial perspective, material affect, and originary technicity. Then I will go on to explain how I have approached these concepts in art production. Partial perspective is a concept brought into non-human theory by Vinciane Desprez. The term was originally coined by Donna Haraway in a 1998 paper as a way forward through polarizing dialogue within feminist science studies. According to partial perspective theory, it is considered that separate entities or groups of entities, presumably any thing with a perspective, would be able to adopt a perspective shared with another thing. The shared perspective amounts to a productive region for shared worlding, such that the shared perspective then takes on its own thingness as a performative entity in worlding. While the original Haraway paper took inspiration from the visual metaphor of perspective, Desprez's theorizing about non-humans and intersubjectivity embraces the material, emotional, and cognitive concepts of attunement or affinities. Thus, Desprez considers that partial perspective to be more fully developed as partial affinities. Concerning non-human animals, ethology or field-based immersive behavioral research suggests that humans can become attuned to other species, not only as a way of seeing the world, but as a way of being and feeling in the world. The partial quality of this is to both acknowledge that there will remain much that is different and lost in translation, perhaps due to differences in form, locomotion, or nutritional requirements, but some zones of existence that can be shared and allow for productively shared worlding. For example, perception of danger or shared trauma, gestures of play, or feeding young with milk are experiences which can be communicated back and forth across species difference. A jackdaw fed worms to ethologist Konrad Lorenz, who had become the bird's interspecies mate. Hans the counting horse taught humans how to give him secret signals. Importantly, the way in which these exchanges occur are not through cognitive learning, as if learning baboon sign language by rote, but through subtle material affective becomings. Material affect. The process by which atomic reveals itself in everyday lived world at human scales of perception is important to clarify. Karen Barad makes very clear that her interpretations are not metaphors or allegories. Atoms do not stand in for people or vice versa. Instead, we start to understand that material entities emerge together through specific interactions and agential cutting together apart. In this way, everything is both stabilized through the materialisms of a fully developed form and always mutable in the way agencies respond to each other or could possibly respond. This can be more easily understood, for example, if we acknowledge that the idea of what a human is has varied drastically and rapidly in terms of material and performative relations within the world. I myself struggled for some time, however, to understand the processes by which such ideas could be experienced in everyday life. However, the important link is to be made is in thinking with affect. Affect studies has become central to academic research in tandem with new materialism and acknowledges the whole of entity responses to existence other environment. So mind-body dualism is obsolete as we begin to understand that the matter of bodies is always already in relation to other and the environment. Neural processes themselves are material. While some of affect studies is concerned with emotion and empathy in particular, the linkage to new materialism as a material affect is a crucial step. So consider that as we can encounter other and the world, sensations rather than emotions particularly our experience of existence. Categorization and sense-making of cognitive process guides us towards functional understandings of these encounters, calling them happy, sad, angry, love, and so forth, but ontologically, material processes and exchanges are occurring. Thus, partial material affectivities could be a more extension of partial perspectives. This fresh thinking with material affect has been quite a breakthrough in my work and has therefore diffracted through my material practice. Although one thing I have learned from my PhD experience is far from bending my practice entirely to the needs of a theoretical suggestion, I can only allow what I embody already to diffract across ideas. That is, I can't suddenly become a dancer and attempt to dance my way with horses into your material-affected hearts. Rather, whatever I was already doing has undergone new identical cuts and has become something else becoming with. This brings me to what I do. Early on in my PhD process, I fell in love with a GoPro camera. Late in my process, I have cause to ask, what is a camera? Originary technicity. Up to this point, I've been talking largely about interspecies animal partial perspectives. So what about things like rocks and cameras? Although neither have the same propensity for self-organization as a biotic living entity, nonetheless, such abiotic things participate significantly in worlding processes. Interest in the partial perspective with abiotic things lends another very important slant on thinking about the mattering of existence. Firstly, we push the concept of a perspective outside the idea of a sentient mind to a fresh position in the universe of being or becoming. Likewise, as Karen Barad caused me to realize, the abiotic is not a mere backdrop to the biotic or even human worlds, but has life cycles as well. Even electrons have life cycles popping in and out of existence within the void. This becomes a powerful position to think from as creatives or philosophers. Consider the difference between thinking with a granite boulder instead of thinking like a human about a granite boulder. Experience the changes in concepts of time, scale, mobility, and perspective as the boulder's worldview materially affects you. Technological devices are a lively type of abiotic entity. What can be said about devices is they already share a partial perspective with humans because humans and technology have emerged together. This is the concept of originary technicity. Technology has never been optional in the emergence of human culture, but has always been there from a theorized ontological beginning. By the way, language is also considered to be a technology by proponents of this theory. Gilbert Simondon and Ernst Cassirer are considered to be the modern progenitors of this concept. This thinking can also be found in Deleuze and Guattari and has been brought into new materialism by Sarah J. Watmore after Adrian Mackenzie. Harking to the outside of this talk, what is a human? According to originary technicity, the human changes along with and sometimes because of technicity. As an aside, you might be wondering if the concept of originary technicity also applies to non-human animals. This is a long discussion for another talk. However, the short answer is yes to a certain extent. Human development with technicity has given our species vast and even diabolical evolutionary advantage. However, Noam Chomsky, amongst others, has conducted extensive research on the similarity of birdsong and human language, which can be read as a similar use of a specific technicity. With these ideas in mind, to answer what is a camera, I found myself beginning to think about the purpose of a video recorder, that the purpose of a video recorder is to record the processes of worlding, as well that the specific type of video camera brings agencies to the recording of worlding, such as field of view, exposure, focus, and so on. Influential conceptual and digital media artist Victor Bergen also responded to the question, what is a camera, in a recent 2014 published interview. He has taken the concept into the virtual space of the camera machinima, or in-game video recorder. I think this helps to verify my point that a camera is a type of technicity and a set of agencies becoming rather than just an inert object. The purpose of this technicity is record worlding from the perspective of the camera and its operator or host, what I call the camera-host hybrid. So, on to recording the partial perspectives of things. When Donna Haraway first suggested the concept of partial perspective in 1988, she stated both that the visual was a limited form of metaphor, but a useful one in this case. The visual continues to be critiqued in post-humanism and new materialism because of its relation to mind-body dualism in a very contemporary human-centric perspective. This obviously stands in conflict with use of a video camera. However, I argue that a video recording is much different to an image, and also the intention and manner of the video recording is of importance. Here I turn to several areas: anthropological or ethnographic films, direct cinema, and materialist cinema. The first two of these make an important distinction between the stage filmmaking for entertainment purposes or even usual documentary style. Instead, they aim to get at the materiality of existence by recording gestures and moments of relationality, taking the focus away from talking heads to soundscapes and focus on the non-human or incidental. For direct cinema practitioners, the intentions were also political, to record life as it really is rather than as sold to us by Hollywood. Materialist cinema I learned about through a recent publication edited in part by Barbara Bolt, Carnal Knowledge. This form of video gives over to the materiality of the filmmaking process itself, the degradation of the film and so on. The process of video recording itself is considered in terms of the material agencies of the camera, the crew, the lights, and the environment, and so on. Materialist cinema is redolent with nonlinear narrative. So now I bring these confluences toward my own installation, which you can see tonight at the opening, a work I call The Wash. I had for some time in my practice worked with a single GoPro camera, either strapped to me or strapped to a horse I was working with. Later, I used 2 GoPros so that both myself and the horse were recorded and being recorded. However, I always felt that 3 GoPros would be an important step, a kind of triangulation of perspectives to gather information on how worlding unfolds from multiple perspectives. So to enact The Wash, I strapped a GoPro to myself, to Prince the pony, and also to a hose. The semi-scripted narrative, a process I have come to use when working with horses, revolves around washing green dye out of Prince's mane and tail. This takes place on an ordinary day in my ordinary inner west backyard. The hose itself is an abiotic thing with a perspective, sometimes shared with a rock or an ant. The GoPro hose hybrid records worlding from this perspective. In the installation work, all 3 recordings are played back at once so as to pose the question, which is the more valid perspective, and also to allow us to remark on how many different perspectives are occurring in space-time around the same series of events. The installation version of The Wash brings materiality and concept back into the viewing experience. Included along with the 3 video projections are image stills from a time when I played the video back onto Prince the pony in his paddock. A recreation of Prince's homemade stable is the projection service for the videos. With these elements, I seek to unfold the materiality of Prince back into the gallery experience and of the video recordings. The final component of the installation is a series of physics-inspired drawings through which I seek to visualize the theoretical thinking behind the work. With The Wash, I have worked to evoke the theoretical possibility of multiple perspectives of things in a way that can be experienced through material affect beyond mere cognitive as reading, talking, thinking, or writing. All right, thanks, and I hope you have gained at least a partial understanding of partial perspective today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.